Hello, everybody. Welcome to TheShow.live. We're waiting for my co-host, Jennifer Hoverstad, to join us. This is going to be a great show, everyone. We've got Janet Fouts joining us today. She has written just an awesome book you guys are going to enjoy. And I can't wait to get to meet her and get to know her. And I can't wait for all of you to get to know Janet also. So as soon as Jennifer joins me, we will start the show off. It's just going to be fun. We are using the Hoverstad.io platform. I encourage everyone to give it a try. Nick, it's good to see you. We have one of the Hoverstad co-founders here joining us. Barb, it's good to see you. Jennifer just stepped in. Janet, we will bring you in a couple of minutes. And I noticed that Jennifer is busy clicking on the link, and there she is.
Hello, how are you?
It is always so good to see you. How are you, Jennifer Hoverstad?
It is good to see you as well. And I guess we are going to go ahead and kick off the show since this does go live as soon as I jump on. I guess, Mitch, as soon as you jumped on. But you guys, welcome to TheShow.live this week, where we have our weekly conversation with influencers, people across the web, across the world, who are basically using live streaming to disrupt industries and influence change. My name is Jen Hoverstad, coming to you from the East Coast, and my buddy over there, Mitch Jackson, coming to you from sunny California. How's it going, Mitch?
It's going fantastic. I just love our show, and I love the guests that we bring on. There's nothing more dynamic, more quickly changing, more real than live streaming, than live video, social video, whatever you want to call it. And this is just, it's so cool to bring on people that are doing exciting things on the social media platforms. And it's always good to see you each week, Jennifer. And for those of you, most of you know Jennifer, but let me just share just a little tiny bit about Jennifer, who she is and what she's doing, because she's an amazing woman doing creative things around the world. And Jennifer is a licensed lawyer, which is kind of how we met. But just like me, she's turned her interest towards the digital platforms. She has clients that span the globe. Her experience in technology, in marketing, in law, in sports, in yoga. Okay. I love your yoga pictures. Those are crazy. Don't ever get me out on the mat. Okay. Because that will be a show in and of itself. It allows Jennifer to have a unique perspective on how to help her clients share their message both locally, nationally, and globally on the social media platforms. And I'm very impressed with what Jennifer's doing, and I'm honored to have you as a co-host on TheShow.live. So this is going to be awesome. How was your weekend, Jennifer?
It was great. And Mitch, certainly with that introduction, just to pass along, I know some of the work that you are very proud of, that you're involved in, but I got to share it with a North Carolina attorney friend of mine this weekend, where we talked about the Stop DD movement. And she is also a personal injury attorney here. And we were just talking about the continuing rise of these issues, especially in our state. I had a friend whose husband this weekend got hit at 55 miles per hour from behind by a texting driver. Fortunately, her husband is okay, but just goes to show you it can happen to anyone. But as I was talking to this other attorney, I shared with her great things that you are doing, where, here you are, a trial attorney. You've been practicing for about 30 years or so now, and you have just taken social media to this new height of not only getting to know people, like we've gotten to know each other, and sharing what you do as an attorney, but also really championing a cause that needs to be championed. So had a little conversation about you, Mitch, this weekend, but just a great weekend overall. Really enjoyed our 100% humidity and 100-degree weather here in North Carolina.
But isn't it? Well, first of all, thank you. And I do feel passionate about people just being safe while you're driving. I mean, and like your friend, I mean, I was hit from behind recently. My daughter's car was totaled, totally unrelated to StopDD.today, but it does bring home the importance of all of us just being mindful and careful when we're behind the wheel. I always tell people, turn your phone off before turning your car on. If you can. I get it, guys, but let's be careful out there. Real good
What,
weekend.
what about your weekend?
Great weekend. I don't know if you know this, but when I was growing up in high school and in college, I used to fly hang gliders. I had a
Oh,
hang 4 rating, which was an expert rating, and it
oh,
came from playing football and watching guys and gals fly off a local mountain. And I always thought I'd rather be up there than playing football down here, and so I ended up getting into the sport. And so this weekend, my son and I went up to Lake Elsinore, and they fly above Lake Elsinore off the mountains. And we brought the drone, got to check out the new gliders, got to spend some quality father-son time together, and
nice.
got to get in some good drone footage, which all of you can find on my Facebook page if you're interested. So it was a great weekend. It's hot out here too, Jen, and
Yeah.
it's kind of good to be back in the office. But listen, and thanks for asking.
Yes.
I want to make sure, first of all, we've got some friends joining us. Nick's here, Barb's here. We've got the co-host, Nick of who's in the chat, you guys. So if everyone can please share this on social media right now, tweet this out, share this on your platforms, use the buttons, use the link above, and let's get some butts in the live seats, because we have a good recorded audience, which is great, and we really appreciate it. But I want people to bring their questions today to Janet.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be.
Janet is she is known all over the world. So I'm excited to see what she brings. And I did want to mention, as people were promoting this, if you'd also share your selfies, as Nick showed us, when he was a guest on our show a few weeks ago, we have this selfie element here where if you click on the selfie tabs, you can click on take a selfie. And not only, well, there we go, Nick, thank you, demonstrating it for everyone so we can see your face. Just get a little personal hello in there, but yeah, please do that as well.
Is this platform cool? Look at the quality of the broadcast, the quality of the video and the audio, the ability to see Nick's beautiful face pop up as a selfie.
Nowhere else.
I mean, it's so cool. And Whosa.io, the platform that shares this live streaming show with you, they are a sponsor of the show. They're a supporter of the show. We encourage everyone to click on Whosa.io and kick the tires on this platform.
Hey, Barb, thank you.
There's Barb. Look at that, another selfie. I love that. That is so cool. I may have to try that at this end, though. And we appreciate and support all that they're doing, because I think both he and his co-partner, co-founder Justin, are approaching live streaming the right way. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. We have a couple of other sponsors of the show, don't we, Jen?
We do, and you mentioned it as far as driving piece goes, and they said this on their Twitter, I'm going to butcher this, but Archon Mounts is one of our ongoing sponsors, certainly making sure that Mitch and I have the equipment we need to live stream from anywhere we are all over the world, but also making sure that you're driving safe. And if I recall, this week is it's like car mount, some kind of car mount week for them. So it's making sure that you're driving safe, that you are not allowing things this is car mount week. So you can actually win a different Archon car mount every day if you follow them on Twitter at Archon_mounts. So that's ARKON_mounts. And that's a great contest going on, but certainly make sure that your eyes are straight ahead, your hands are on the wheel, and they're not fumbling with a phone or even your GPS system.
And we thank Archon for all they're doing and for supporting the show it's been, since I think February of this year. So it's very much appreciated. We also have rightside.co supporting our show, and they're the provider of premium .live domains. For example, TheShow.live, domains like .ninja and other custom domains on the right side of the dot. A great way to help you stand out and differentiate yourself from everybody else on the internet. I think it's one way of showing everybody how mindful you can be when it comes to establishing a social media presence. Take the time to have a really cool domain on the right side of the dot. So we appreciate everything that rightside.co is doing also.
Absolutely. And so, you guys, we are going to be bringing Janet in here shortly. Jen, I guess if you want to go ahead and click on, and Mitch will give you a proper introduction. But again, please go ahead one more time. If you haven't already, share this out with your followers. Make sure they know Janet is coming in the hot seat. And you guys go ahead and start filling up our Q&A as you hear points of interest where you'd like to ask Janet a question. Hi, Janet.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, Janet. Let me give you a proper introduction. It's just
Oh
going to take a
gosh.
moment. I've consolidated really 3 hours down to about 30 seconds. But, but listen, everybody, Janet's the author of 5 books on social media marketing. All the books surround the concept of having the right intention, the right mindset to market social media, to engage in social media, and to help your business grow on social media. Her latest book is Mindful Social Marketing: How Authenticity and Generosity Are Transforming Marketing. And during today's show, we're going to chat with Janet about social media marketing, having a mindful mindset, and hopefully incorporate some of her techniques and ideas into social media and live streaming. When she's not writing books, Janet's the CEO of Tattoo Digital Marketing, Digital Media. It's a social media marketing agency in the Silicon Valley. She serves brands and social good organizations like Human Journey, which was co-founded by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. That's amazing. And she helps startups and Fortune 50 companies. She's listed in the top 50 marketing thought leaders over 50 by Brand Quarterly magazine, and one of the top 100 giving influencers on Twitter, according to Give Local America. She's been quoted in USA Today, Forbes magazine, and Thought Leader Life, and her writings are syndicated on many different well-established business platforms. Janet, thanks for being on TheShow.live today.
Thank you. Wow, the whole bio. I need to make that thing shorter.
No, you know what? It's important that everyone understands exactly who's on our show. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy day.
I'm really happy to be here. I've been enjoying watching the show, and your move over here has worked really well. So, it's been really, really great to be on the show. I'm excited.
Well, thank you, Janet. And certainly, we were able to connect with you simply through live streaming when our guest Brian Kramer a few months ago mentioned your name, and Mitch and I were like, wait, we don't know Janet. And, here we go. We connected right away, and boom, now we're friends. But it's all thanks to the power of live streaming and social media. So this right here is a product of its work and a testament to it. But, Janet, I want to talk. Sometimes we like to start backwards and hear the whole story moving forwards at the beginning. But I loved your recent blog post on the social brilliance of Pokemon Go. So I wanted to start out with us talking more about trends that you're seeing right now, given the wide variety of clients and people that you're working with. So maybe let's start there. Like, what are you currently seeing in the month of July 2016? And maybe Pokemon Go is it in the social world? What do we need to be paying attention to?
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about Pokemon Go, because when we're talking about that and we're talking about distracted driving in the same show, people are being really stupid out there. And, it's the same thing as everything else. Texting, people will do stupid things. But what I love about Pokemon Go is that I went out yesterday with my son. We walked around a local lake. We got outside. We saw hundreds of people who were with their families outside. They weren't in front of a computer. They weren't playing on a console. It's engaging. And that's, to me, what's really brilliant about this game, is that it really brings the social aspect. And, we need to be a little more mindful while we're playing that, we don't cross streets, we don't walk into cars, but it's really been amazing to watch it go. I think that the biggest movement that we're seeing right now on social media is this right here. It's live streaming and seeing all these new platforms coming up. Blab kind of broke ground for that. We could go back to Google Hangouts, but now there's so much more interaction. This is our opportunity to be heard and to really direct where people are going with their social interaction. We can be really negative here. We can be really nasty. We can have a lot of trolls, or we can use this as a positive movement to change the world. And that's what I love about it and where it's going.
Your new book, Janet, is titled Mindful Social Marketing: How Authenticity and Generosity Are Transforming Marketing. Can you share with all of us, what is mindful social media marketing? What is that? What's the concept all about?
Sure. Well, I really feel that social media gives us a unique opportunity to be mindful and how we connect with the people that we talk to, the people that follow us, but also our markets and how we actually use marketing. If you're not authentic today in marketing, you're going to be outed in minutes. It's really time for us to be honest and authentic with our users, to listen, to use active listening, to be able to engage people more effectively. And, if you're really not being authentic, it just ain't going to work. So you really need to be using those mindful tactics to really stay engaged and to get people engaged. And generosity is hugely important. One of the things that, we tell our clients when they say, oh, well, we don't want to give away our secret sauce, or we don't want to tell people how everything works, they're going to find out anyway. So Be generous. The more generous you are, the more people are going to be attracted to you and your brand. So it's a new way of doing things, but not really so new. If you go back years and years and years ago, when they had a pickle barrel in the hardware store, those people came to that hardware store, they sat around and had coffee, they talked to each other. That's how the marketer learned about his customer and what they wanted. We're doing the same thing now with social media.
So what you're saying is the Show.live is one big pickle jar, or one big pickle barrel, right?
I like pickles.
I do too.
There you go. We are the pickle barrel now. That's awesome. Can you give us some examples of some companies or brands that you see doing this well?
Well, I think that, airlines and travel companies have been really getting this right. You see Southwest Air responding, you see JetBlue responding. A really good example with me is Purina, of all things. I have a really cute little Chihuahua, and she's getting a little white around her chin. And I put a picture of her on Instagram. Purina saw it, they downloaded it, and they kind of dazzled it up, and they said, gray is the new whatever. And they sent me the picture. Then I said, wow, that's really cool. I shared it on Twitter. They direct messaged me and sent me a box of goodies for my dog.
Wow, that's awesome.
Paying attention and being generous.
Absolutely.
And it's often
Nick says they have a Chihuahua too.
Oh, he does. And he walks his Chihuahua on Snapchat. I follow him all the time. If you guys aren't connected on Snapchat, make sure you connect Janet. He's the VP of experts.com. Great company, and a Chihuahua owner. It's not that easy to listen sometimes, especially for us lawyers. I can't speak for Jen, but we like to talk. Okay. And what I tell young trial lawyers is if they want to be successful in trial, talk less and listen more. Listen to what the witness is saying, opposing counsel, and the judge. Listen to what the jury's telling you during the jury selection process. And then fine tune your presentation accordingly. Any secrets for actively listening on social and on the live streaming platforms?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say that this is something I struggle with all the time, because what happens to us is when we're live streaming, we're thinking, okay, they said something really important that I want to respond to there. Lawyers have a skill at learning how to do that over time, but us civilians maybe don't. It's really hard to just shut up and listen and wait. Because if you stop to think what that person said and you're thinking about what you're going to say next, you've now stopped listening to the entire conversation. They could go off someplace completely different, and you need to go there with them. It's a conversation. So it's really important to just stop and listen and let yourself be there. If you absolutely have to, and you see really good interviewers do this all the time, write down a note of what they said and then let it go and listen. So that's for video, that's a really great way to do that.
Well, what's far as like moving into the video piece, especially the live streaming, I guess, application within a marketing strategy. What are you seeing as far as the mindful piece goes of how companies and brands, or perhaps even individuals, they're really effectively being mindful with the live streaming aspect?
Well, I think, there are a lot of people who are being mindful. I think you guys are a great example because you have an actual engaged conversation. And I've seen that in your past shows too, where people are really engaging. And it's really about a live stream is a conversation. And I think that's the key thing to remember, that it's not, this is what I want to say. This is my platform. I'm here to talk about my book. And it's not all about me, because that's not true. We're here to have a conversation and actually have an open discussion. So I think that's the most crucial thing that people can remember.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed on social, though, any issues with whether or not your audience really wants to have that conversation? In other words, I found myself sometimes commenting on an active blog post or maybe during a live stream. And then after I've shared my comment, sometimes I wished I hadn't, because the recipient of my comment, based upon follow-up communications, they didn't want to know what I thought. They had a voice, they had an agenda. They just wanted to hear themselves, speaking through the digital word. Any advice for, am I reading that wrong, number one? Or is there a new dynamic that you're seeing with respect to communication on digital that maybe wasn't as apparent offline?
Well, it's interesting. We're seeing a lot less comments on blogs. That commenting is down. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it is just because there's so much comment spam that a lot of people have turned comments off. Right. But, people sometimes use blogs as a soapbox. They really don't want to hear your opinion. They could care less what you think. They're using it as a marketing tool to talk about what they want to talk about. And if that's the case, then maybe they should turn off comments, because blogs are a conversation too. I get a lot of spam on my blog. I would say probably 80% of the comments on my blog get deleted because they're junk, or it's somebody trying to use it to market themselves. But when you get somebody like you who has an active comment and it's actually thoughtful, respond to that. If you don't respond to that, that's a failure of the blog, not the commenter.
Okay. Yeah, it's just a different dynamic I've picked up. It seems like some people want to just share their voice both here in the live video and over on our chat, which isn't happening today. But I've noticed that on Periscope and some of the live streaming platforms, and it gets under my skin a little bit, Jan. And I'm not sure, you talk about active listening. How about active reacting? Do you have any tips on how we should be reacting to maybe some things that we don't like what's being said about us?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it's really hard, especially on Periscope, because the comments are going by so quickly. It's hard to stay on top of them. Even Facebook Live, for example, which is a wonderful platform, and there's huge opportunity there. And honestly, I don't use it enough, but it's really hard to stay on top of the comments in the live stream. So, you could always come back and add your voice in later. Picking up those comments shows respect for your audience. And if you're not, then you're being kind of disrespectful and you're really just using it as a soapbox. And then I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, I don't need to come back to your show.
And Janet, you do have a number of recorded interviews I noticed on your YouTube channel that you certainly use the power of video to not only provide influence in your own message, but also to connect with those people where they are also influencers in their own right. So talk a little bit about how your use of video and live streaming have evolved, because certainly not only do you advise companies and businesses, but you have your own personal brand. And I know a lot of people that I see today in our audience also have their own personal brand that they're trying to grow. So talk a little bit about the use of video there.
Well, let's go back to generosity. With Mindful Social Chat, which by the way is on tomorrow, we really use the show like an interview. So it isn't about me just because I'm the host. I don't pitch the book. I don't talk about my own stuff. That's not the point. The point is the guest and giving them a platform and having an actual legitimate conversation. It still needs to be two ways, but it's really about finding people that are really interesting, bringing them forward, hearing what they have to say, and sharing it with an audience. And that helps everyone. And there are so many people out there that have really great things to say and need a platform. So, it really allows them to do that. I like this kind of platform where we also get the chat on the right side, because that helps other people have a voice, and they can actually, you know, say a lot of things and get engaged amongst themselves, even though they're not the main feature. And I think that's a really wonderful aspect of platforms like this one.
And you
Definitely.
and you mentioned mindful social chat. What time on Tuesdays is that on?
It's on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Pacific. So,
And we're on Blab still, though we're thinking about moving to this platform.
this platform is awesome. Let's chat. So I want to give you a chance to give a shout out to somebody that's been on Mindful Social Chat, your live streaming show, who was a guest, who said something, did something, or shared something that you had no idea, you know, that was going to happen. It surprised you, but kind of emphasizes what's really cool about live streaming video, if you know what I mean. Do you have
Wow,
a
put me
takeaway
on
or
the
someone you
spot,
could,
don't you?
well, you know, I think you can probably handle it. Is there anybody that knocked your socks off, you know, with that type of experience?
Well, I actually have a couple. One of them is Ted Rubin. And on the show with Ted, we talked about empathy. And that's a really important quality to Ted. But we also talked about active listening, and we hadn't really gone into depth with that before the show. We're friends, and we've met several times, even though we live on opposite coasts. And we really got into the conversation about active listening, and he taught me a lot. It's really something that takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice, and I'm still learning it because I have a real inclination, as you'll notice if you look at any of the shows, to interrupt. It's my worst habit. So I'm working on active listening, but it's still getting there.
Well, that's a good example. You know, yeah, I was just curious. Ted does a good job at all the above, and I'll tell you, I haven't picked up any on any interruptions, Janet. I think you're doing a very good job. You keep this up, we might have to ask you back.
Oh my gosh. Another person that I'd like to mention, because she's here right now, is Dawn Carter. Dawn and I met through when we were doing Mindful Social as a Twitter chat before we moved it to Blab. And she's actually really amazing. And we had such a great show. And it was really all about generosity and also how Twitter works and how reciprocity is important. And, you know, that's the thing about social media. It's about reciprocity. You can't have a conversation without reciprocity, right?
That is true. And I will second that. I got to meet Dawn at the Summit Live conference earlier this year, and she was just fantastic. And I also enjoy following her on social. So I can see why you'd want to do a shout out there. You know, just remind everyone in our chat right now, if you have any questions for Janet or any questions you just generally like to throw out there, you can use that Q&A button you'll see there beside selfies, and go ahead and ask your questions, and we can actually show it to everyone here up on the screen once it's been asked. So you can use that button there and ask us some of your questions. So Janet, of course, the big question is now, like, you know, kind of talking about the current state of things and currently what you've captured in your book right now. You know, what do you predict for the future over the next maybe couple of years as far as the social piece goes and live streaming with the considerations that you've studied in your book with mindful social marketing? Where do you think we go?
Well, I think it's been really interesting to see how many people are interested in adopting mindfulness and, you know, being more present, being more aware. You know, as a yoga practitioner, I'm sure that you practice it as well. And that doesn't mean that you have to meditate. It means that you have to be here, that you have to be present and paying attention. And I think, you know, with our political climate and all of the horrific things that are going on around the world, I'm seeing a new trend on social towards less negativity and more positivity, trying to find ways that we can impact our world in a really positive way. And we all have the power to do that, no matter what social media network we're on, no matter what religion or political affiliation we have an incredible opportunity with these platforms to make change in the world. And in order to do that, we just need to be mindful about how we use social media. Before you share something, think about how it's going to affect the people that follow you. Before you attack somebody on a blog, think about two things. How is it going to make that person feel? And maybe more importantly to some of us, how does that make you look? Because if you're being a jerk on Twitter all by yourself, people will see that out of context and they're going to make that you. That's going to be who they think you are. That's your brand now. So pay attention to that. Take a moment, take a breath before you hit send. And that gives you a huge opportunity to make change in the world by not pumping more negativity into it. It's way too easy to dump a lot of negativity right now because there's a lot going on, but we don't have to. So trying not to do that, trying to think of ways to uplift instead of put down is huge on social.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you just joining us or watching the show in its recorded version, we are. What? I'm sorry. Oh, can you hear me, Janet?
Yes.
Okay, I was just going to say, for those of you joining us.
I'm actually delayed, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I will. We're speaking with Janet Fouts, CEO of Tattoo Digital Media and author of Mindful Social Marketing, How Authenticity and Generosity Are Transforming Marketing. So, Janet, once again, it's great to see you on the show. I have a question for you. So, in chapter, let me see what it is. It's chapter 10 of your book, When It All Goes Horribly Wrong. We're talking about a situation that, somebody doesn't think things through and things on social go horribly wrong. Can you share some tips for those of us that post something, it goes horribly wrong, we regret posting it, or maybe didn't appreciate the impact it would have on our audience? What are some mindful steps that we can take to try to correct the wrong?
Well, from a brand perspective, let's start there. A lot of brands think if they ignore it, it'll go away. And that used to be true when it was something in print, that things went by, nobody noticed it, it didn't get picked up. If you do something wrong and it's noticed on social media, it may just blow up. So you have a couple of different things that you can do. Let's say that it's a small thing. Don't hide it. Don't try to, just fire people because, or find a scapegoat to fire. That isn't really going to help you. What you need to do is address the situation in a very honest and open way and say, we made a mistake or something is wrong. And when somebody gives you an opportunity by saying something bad happened with your product, that may happen to other people too. So this is an opportunity for you to say, thank you. We're going to look into that. We're going to correct it. Maybe you want to take it offline and say, send us your email and let's talk. Find ways to deal with it the same way you would if they walked into your store and said, hey, here's my product and it's broken. What are you going to do? You have to deal with it in a face-to-face kind of way. Now, as individuals, sometimes we do stupid things and we make really bad mistakes. And there are legions of really bad mistakes all over social media. And I don't really want to bring those back to attention, but I do want to say that we understand everybody makes mistakes. Simply say that. Say, we made a mistake and we want to correct that. I'm sorry is a really powerful tool. If you say something to someone and you don't realize that you've totally devastated them, say you're sorry and say it in public. Don't just, quietly call them on the phone and say, I'm really sorry I was a jerk. Say it in public so that people understand that, because that makes you look really great. It lets the person know that you're willing to say so in public. There's lots of ways that we can do that using social media.
I'm working on a blog post, Janet, that hopefully will come out tomorrow or the next day. And it talks about treating our social media communities and participating in a neighborhood watch type of scenario. In other words, we're doing this where we live because we care about our neighbors, we care about our friends, we want to protect each other. Why aren't we doing that on some of our social media communities? And some of us are, but many people aren't. They feel like you're calling someone out, or they feel like you're picking on somebody. And the problem I've seen with social, and I'm seeing this problem as I'm struggling to write the article, is that it's easy for people to share something that's completely out of context.
Yes.
So while you may have done everything correctly, that person's audience, if it's large, may only be seeing one sentence of a 600-page document or 30 seconds of a 2-hour live streaming video show. And it's so easy for people to spin an issue any way they want it. And we're seeing a lot of that in politics right now. Any tips or thoughts on whether or not social media communities should have some type of self-imposed neighborhood watch? Should we be looking out for each other? And if we are, is there a right or wrong way to go about doing that? Calling out people that are committing fraud, calling out people that are doing illegal things, for example, okay? Not people that disagree with us about religion, about politics or something like that, but things that might hurt other people. What are your thoughts about that? Is that being mindful or is it being reckless?
Well, people will always pull something out of context if it suits their particular mood. And that's their problem, not your problem. If someone attacks you for something, that's their problem. And it's really important for us to realize that those things are seen by our network as what they are. It's really important that we have networks of people that we trust. This is one of the reasons that I don't auto follow. If you look at my Twitter network, for example, you'll see that I am followed by a lot more people than I follow. And that's not because I'm really cool or anything like that. It's that I am careful about who I follow. And once you develop, and this is especially true on things like Facebook, once you develop your network, you will have people that will come to your defense. And if you just take a breath and let them defend you, then that has a lot more weight than defending yourself. So that's one thing that you can do, is let other people defend you. I've been in situations where I've seen somebody under attack, and rather than kind of flame the fires by keeping that conversation going, I would just send that person a message and say, you know what, I support you and it's okay. Just let it go. Don't keep the wheel of nastiness turning, because it's very easy for us to get caught up in those discussions and keep them going. And by responding to the trolls, we're just keeping that going. And we don't want to do that. It's really easy to just step back for a second, take a breath and say, okay, you know what? That's not right. And I'm going to let it go and see what my community does, because the community will come to your aid if you've built a community that supports you. If you haven't, then you need to do a little more work on that.
That's great advice. And, it's funny, before the internet, Janet, we would tell lawyers in the firm, when you're having a dispute with opposing counsel, do that letter, print it out and let it sit on your desk for 24 hours. Give it some thought, because usually the next day things are different. I did send Jen a new link. So
no, that was my fault. I did not click the start button. I have literally been sitting here for like 5 minutes listening to Janet's full answer, but I didn't click the green button. It's my fault.
No, listen, it's all good. I just didn't want anybody to think I was forgetting about you. Nick Richwain asked a question, Janet. How does one practice mindfulness offline when we're constantly checking our online profiles?
Oh, I love that question, Nick. I love that question so much. Because I manage social accounts for a lot of clients, as well as my own social accounts, which are kind of a lot. And I really restrict my time now. I only answer my email 3 times a day. I go on Twitter. If someone mentions me and I happen to look at my phone, I might go on. But I kind of schedule my time, and I try not to be on 24/7, because we all know what happens. You go on Facebook to respond to something somebody says, then you see that cat video, you're gone for an hour. It's too easy to get distracted, and too easy to get distracted by things that are completely useless. I'm a huge fan of a thing called the Pomodoro method. And basically what that is to take 20-minute blocks, at least that's what I take, that I'm going to work on a specific task. So I open my email, I set my timer, I spend 20 minutes, and then I get the heck out of there and I go do something else. Tony Robbins calls it chunking. Same thing, chunking up your time that you're going to spend on those networks and having a little restraint so that you're not always distracted by those networks because it's way too easy, way too easy to spend all day surfing social media. And even I, obviously a proponent of it, I don't do it anymore. I just don't. I wouldn't get anything done.
How have you noticed, I'm curious, maybe from a personal perspective, how have you noticed, has your kind of awareness for social, like, has it gone up or down because you're doing the Pomodoro method now? Or
I think I'm actually able to be much more mindful in the posts that I make. I still automate, but I automate very differently. I will go through my RSS feeds and I'll schedule things to go out. If nobody responds to those, then I don't need to respond back, but I've shared the information with my network. That kind of stuff really helps me to spend better, more focused time and actually make thoughtful posts as opposed to spending all day, retweeting, resharing information. So I think that I'm a little bit more mindful in how I put content out there. Still a lot to work on, but getting there.
That's great.
And as far as putting content out there, we have a lot of mutual friends, the three of us, who like to focus their attention with employee advocacy issues. In other words, empowering their employees when it comes to social media to represent the company, to represent the brand, to be a part of that entire experience. Janet, what are your thoughts on that? How can we empower employees to have the proper mindful approach to social media? Any thoughts, any tips?
I think the one thing that we maybe don't do enough as employers is to actually give our employees the tools they need to help us. We may not share logos. We don't tell them what the messaging is. We don't tell them when products are going to be released, and we don't set rules. A lot of people are very nervous about having social media guidelines for a company, for example. But what that does is give us lines within to work. So if we know where the lines are, if we know what the rules are, we're more likely to take action. But if we don't know what the rules are and we don't know what we can and we can't do, we tend to do nothing. So empowering people with giving them guidelines, giving them basic things like IBM, be nice, don't lie, don't misrepresent. If it's not on the website, don't tell people about it. Those kind of things are really enabling to employees to help them be advocates. The other thing to do is to profile them. We like to tell people, if you've got a really great employee, profile them on social media. We work with a hotel that has a campaign called Say Hello. And what they do is they promote a different employee and they just tell us about their lives. This guy's a painter and this guy is a dishwasher, but he's also running this side business. There are a lot of really wonderful things to share about your employees that humanize the business, which is good for the business. And it's great for the employees because they get recognition and they deserve that.
I love that. And I'm going to hand the microphone back over to Jen. But before I do that, I'd like to invite our viewers, if you'd like to join us on live video, just raise your digital hand over in the chat and we'll bring you on to meet Janet and to ask your question.
Absolutely. Janet, looking at your, Barb, does your selfie mean that you want to come on? Because if it does, we're more than welcome to have you on. Just let me know in the notes or in the comments if you'd like to come on. But yeah, I think that, probably a lot of people, you started your company in 1996. And so while certainly the idea of mindfulness has been around for a long time, I think it's probably becoming more mainstream or maybe more acceptable to talk about. People have become more interested in it in the past, 3, 4, 5 years. Tell me, where did this come from for you? Has it kind of always been a part of Janet, or when were you really able to make the connection with social marketing and mindfulness?
Well, it's interesting. We started Tattoo Digital Media as an online community for the people who worked in the restaurant industry. And we really felt that we needed to have a voice. And so, to me, the internet has always been about community. And over the last few years, we've seen social media develop and more conversations on social media. I've seen more and more businesses being mindless about how they use social media, not thinking about listening, not thinking about who their market is, and still using that old yell and sell marketing that we saw in the past. And I think for me, that's why I wrote the book. I've written a lot about social media, but I really wanted to remind people that it's about people. It's about community. If you want to participate in a social community, golly, you need to be social. What a shock. So, finding a way to do that and be intelligent about it is really what it all came about. As far as mindfulness goes, I like to think I've been mindful, but who knows? I think that it's a catchphrase now, but it's been around for thousands of years.
Right. Yeah. It's a skill all of us can continue to work on. That's the great thing about it. Nick, welcome to the show. How are you? Oh, Nick, I cannot hear you. Can anybody else hear Nick?
No, but let me just say, talk about someone that's very mindful in what he does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
fantastic. Cool. Hi, Nick. How you doing?
Hi. Good to see you guys. Janet, I was wondering, what do you do your training on? I saw on your website there's some training. Do you do it on the mindfulness in social media, or you do it on social media in general?
Great question. Well, I actually do a little bit of both. I do a lot of corporate training on social media within corporations. And since the book came out, I've been doing more mindfulness training specifically for entrepreneurs, because I think sometimes we really we're running so fast and making ourselves so crazy as entrepreneurs that we can use a little mindfulness training. And so I'm kind of crossing over the two, and actually that will be my next book.
Oh, okay, cool.
What's interesting, Janet, is Nick actually practices, I think, mindful social with his company. He's always very engaging, very supportive. We've all met offline at different functions and events, and hopefully I'll get to meet you someday, Janet. But Nick does a really good job. But here's the thing. We're in an industry where it's pretty hardcore. There are people, sometimes there's a lot of zeros attached to what we're doing. And it could be like this. Nick's dealing with high-profile expert witnesses. I'm dealing with lawyers all the time. Sometimes it's hard to be mindful. Okay, forget about social media. I'm talking about offline. But having said that, when we're engaging online on social and live streaming and we're trying to be mindful, I'm just curious, and this is both to you, Janet, and to Nick, just a couple of short tips on how we can do that with somebody that's not interested in being mindful at all. How do you guys engage with people like that? Janet, why don't you go first?
The thing about mindfulness to remember is that it's something that you do, and it has no reaction to what other people do. If they aren't being mindful, that's their problem. And it's really hard to kind of dig that into yourself. But a really good friend of mine, Leva Judic, taught me one thing, and that's start being conscious of your response to things. If you feel like you're getting really aggravated because somebody's going off and, whatever their deal is, it's their deal, it's not your deal. And you just need to take a breath, take a split second. Being mindful doesn't mean you have to meditate 20 minutes before you respond to something. Or as some of my mindful friends would say, let me sit with that. And I love that and all, and that's great, but it isn't a good response for someone who's living in a really fast-moving world. Right. And sure, you can sit with it later. Right now, you got 12 seconds. Take that 12 seconds, stop what you're doing, and think, how am I feeling right now? Am I angry? And if I'm angry, why am I angry? You can do that really fast. And if you realize you're angry, you can stop that. But if you just blurt out a response, may not be a good thing.
So it takes a bit of self-control and self-awareness.
It's self-awareness, and that's really the core of mindfulness.
Nick, how do you deal with high-pressure, stressed-out expert witnesses?
Yeah, no, there's two examples that kind of popped in my mind. One is the customer who's being belligerent via email, and I'll still go, if I've answered a couple of times and they're still being stubborn, I'll go ahead and just take the 24 hours. If I've given them an answer that they need, they're still being, I'm not dealing with it today. I'll get back to you tomorrow. And usually this is not around the time that I'm calling them because we have a case for them, because they're extra kind at that point. They're really kind then. But we'll usually do you know what, I've answered this. If this person's going to be this way, let me just take the evening to think about it and think about how I'm going to respond. The second one is when we are discussing issues that are usually related to expert witnesses or legal cases that are going on in social media specific, oftentimes a police brutality case. I try to be very balanced in what we share on social in these cases that involve expert witnesses that are also high profile and highly polarizing. So if we're sharing about a police brutality case, we usually try and cover it from both the plaintiff or prosecution side and the defense side, and give share articles related to both, because it can be very polarizing if people think that you're taking one position or another, and that's on social. So, and that's through the brand as well as my professional Twitter account for the brand. So I try to do a balanced approach.
Great tips.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. You guys want to know what I do?
Yes.
Yes,
And
Mitch.
it's
Go ahead.
something just something I've always tried to teach my kids is I have a 3-step process. I deflect. I pretend like I'm a piece of Teflon, and I just let it deflect off of me. And then I reflect about what my responses could be based upon what the two of you have already just said: self-awareness, trying to appreciate the situation, and then I select my response. And sometimes that happens within seconds. Sometimes it happens within days. So it's deflect, reflect, and then select your response. That's worked really well for me and has kept me out of a lot of trouble over the years as a lawyer. And hopefully it'll work for some people in our audience. Hey, Nick, thanks for stopping by.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Nice
Nice
to
to meet you,
meet
Janet.
Good to see you.
Okay,
Have a
bud.
good one.
Take care.
Bye.
I'd like to add to that, because I think that's the one thing that we often let ourselves respond with a knee-jerk response.
Mhm.
And it only needs to take a second to just pause. And what's really interesting to me, and working with Desmond Tutu is really cool, and his daughter, Empa, is also really cool. And something that I've learned from them is that when you ask them a question, they actually think about their answer. Wow, what a concept, right? You can see them stop, formulate the answer, and then they answer. And that's our skill, because we tend to just immediately respond because, somebody asked a question really quickly. That doesn't mean that we have to respond really quickly. We can take a second, doesn't have to be minutes, to respond and just pause. And often just pausing helps everybody settle, not just us. So that pause is huge. And it's about being self-aware, as you said.
Jennifer, we have to follow up. I don't care what you can ask her. We have to follow up about Desmond Tutu.
Oh yeah,
mean,
that's
come on.
amazing.
We have to follow up and tell us some of your experiences. You mentioned that casually, like just yesterday, but tell us about your experiences with Desmond Tutu and something that you'd like to share with us.
Well, it's insane, because it was a really amazing experience working with Forgiveness Challenge, which was Human Journeys project with Desmond and Empa Tutu. And we actually worked with the Dalai Lama and his team as well, because they're working on a book together, the Book of Joy. And our whole team, except for me, because I was doing social, so I got stuck in the States, but the rest of the team went to Dharamsala and actually stayed at the Dalai Lama's compound for a week.
Wow.
What an
Amazing.
experience.
And the thing that you learn from people like that, who are so embedded in their own spirituality, is to slow down.
Mhm.
And if I took anything away from that entire amazing experience, it was to slow down and appreciate more, because we have amazing opportunities and we shouldn't pass them up.
Thank you. Anna.
Wow.
Thank you.
And I think too, Janet, I mean, that is but based on, my kind of amateur and personal study of mindfulness, I mean, that's truly what mindfulness is all about. And obviously a great lesson for our personal life as well as for what we're doing when we're living digitally too. So that's some amazing insight. What other, if you've had, I mean, I don't know that you could actually really top that lesson from clients, but anything else that you've come across that has just truly left a career impact on you with a project or a person you've worked with?
Well, I also worked on the Blue Key campaign with Shonali Burke, which was an amazing experience because that campaign was really spreading awareness about what's going on in the world and how people are impacted on a daily basis. And, we tend to be very privileged here in the US, and we forget that there are a lot of people subsisting on a lot less than we are. And to be able to help them in a social media campaign all around the world with people that we've never met and get engaged is amazing. And it's empowering for those of us who can get engaged with it. And I really want to encourage people to look for things that they can support, because if you support a cause through social media, you can open that up to your entire network. And if someone in your network picks it up, it spreads like wildfire. And we need more of that in the world right now. We need to find things that we can support and help. You don't have to give money. You don't have to build the house. All you have to do is say that you support it and show people the work that's being done. And there are a lot of opportunities to do that. So I really want to encourage everybody to do that.
I love that. That's great. And Janet, as we wrap up, we just have a few minutes here. If people want to continue to stay in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm J Fouts pretty much everywhere except LinkedIn. And you can find me on Twitter at J Fouts, which is my favorite personal network. I love Twitter. And my website is janetfouts.com.
Excellent. Well, it has been a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you so much.
I haven't had a chance to read Mindful Social Marketing, but I will be downloading it and reading it this week, Janet.
Great.
Just an amazing experience listening to your thoughts, your tips, your advice. I know our audience is going to be walking away both live and recorded with massive value. I can't wait to meet you and give you a mindful hug at a convention when we see each other. I mean, it's just thanks for being on the show. Tell Brian Kramer we said hi, and we really appreciate you being on TheShow.live. Thank you, Janet.
Thanks so much. It was really a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. It's good to see you. Good to see you, Jen.
You too. And you guys, next week we have Lauren Gaglioli. So make sure you go to TheShow.live and subscribe so you don't miss it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.